I don't see Kevin Costner, to start with. I don't see Kevin Costner and I going on a date anytime soon, despite the fact that we've known each other for nearly 30 years. One of Hollywood's biggest sex icons, Sharon Stone, became famous for that iconic TV scene in which she crossed her legs. On the other hand, she suffered a 9-day brain bleed after a sudden fall a few years later. A miracle occurred and she lived despite having a 1% chance of doing so. However, she was unable to walk and her memory was wiped out. Their child's custody was a contentious issue after her husband divorced her and married another woman. The entertainment industry laughed her off and rejected her. Just how did Sharon Stone get back up after falling? Suddenly, she was famous, and then she was alone. Feelings will be evoked by this narrative. On March 10, 1958, Sharon Stone came into this world in Meadville, Pennsylvania. The town's economy revolved around farming and manufacturing. Joseph Stone was a factory worker, and Dorothy did double duty as housekeeper and accountant. She was the second of 4 children. She grew up in a modest home. Their lack of wealth was never an issue, though. Sharon stood out even at an early age. Even before she turned 1, she was walking and talking. Her intelligence became apparent to those around her shortly thereafter. A true genius, she scored 154 on an intelligence test. However, her IQ only served to heighten her sense of isolation. In addition to being the brightest student in her class, her peers considered her to be the most eccentric. The words weirdo and reader were used to mock her by her friends. Sharon eventually came to terms with being alone, but she still felt out of place no matter where she went. Even though nobody wanted to be in her presence, the reality inside her home was much worse. For a long time, Sharon lived in constant terror due to a terrible secret she was unable to share with anyone. Because her grandfather had harmed her, she had a difficult and terrifying childhood. She pushed the thoughts to the bottom of her mind, pretending they never occurred. However, that type of anguish never truly goes away. Rather, it patiently awaits the optimal moment to resurface. The traumatic experiences resurfaced in therapy years later, like a long-buried nightmare. This horrific truth was initially revealed by Sharon in her memoir, The Beauty of Living Twice. She was threatened with death by her grandpa if she spoke out about the abuse she endured. During her childhood, she was left with no one to turn to and nowhere to run. Fighting for one's life was an everyday struggle, and fighting against fear was an evening struggle as well. In the wake of her grandfather's death, Sharon's grandmother did something that nobody had anticipated. Locking the door behind her, she made Sharon and her sister stand over his lifeless body, unable to speak or cry. Even though the agony had ended, the nightmare had only just begun. The pain from her childhood was already bad, and her father only made it worse. Joseph Stone was quite authoritarian in his disciplinary policies. Actually, he was so rigid that he frequently smacked his children severely. On the other hand, Sharon reached a breaking point at the age of 14. One day, while he was yelling at her, she stood firm, met his gaze, and asked, "Do you need to hit me again to feel like a man?" Those words hit him like a shock. Joseph Stone froze and began to weep. That was the one and only time Sharon ever saw her dad so frail. After that, he stopped physically abusing his children. School was the scene of yet another horrific event that befell her during her childhood. She was the target of her friends' ridicule despite her stellar academic performance. Few genuine friends could be found among her. Because she didn't fit the typical beauty ideal, some people viewed her as the unattractive duckling. An accident changed everything, and then fate struck again. When Sharon was 14 years old, her horse leapt forward and knocked her off her horse. Her neck was severely injured as she plummeted to the floor from a height after becoming entangled in a net. A constant reminder of how precarious life could be, the agony returned year after year. Despite her injuries, Sharon continued to excel academically. At the age of 15, she received a scholarship to Edinburgh University and dropped out of high school early. But the moment she set foot on campus, she felt out of place. There seemed to be no escape from her predicament. Sharon Stone realized she had to get out of Meadville if she wanted her life to improve. You have to make the decision to seize opportunities, they don't merely appear. The initial event that influenced her to change was a beauty pageant. Despite Sharon's lack of self-confidence, she entered a local beauty pageant at her friends' and family's urging. Even though she hadn't expected to win, she was pleasantly surprised when she did. That title wasn't for show, it was her passport out of the sleepy little town. An offer to model in New York City came her way not long after. The fashion industry was a brutal workplace, as Sharon soon discovered. She was unhappy in her role as a model after signing with the Ford agency, although she did appear in a few publications. Standing there in their flashy clothes and striking a pose without expressing a word or revealing their emotions felt hollow. Being a model was just one of her many aspirations. And she still desired more. Becoming an actress was her newfound aspiration. Hollywood, though, was unfriendly. The more casting calls she went to, the more rejection she received. She received comments about how unattractive she was, and how she lacked the allure of a leading lady. Sharon Stone was considered by many filmmakers of the time to be nothing more than a pretty girl from a little town, her features sharp and lacking the suppleness that is characteristic of Hollywood beauty. If that was going to be the reason Hollywood rejected her, then she would find another way to prove herself. She landed her first acting role in 1980's Stardust Memories, a film directed by the legendary Woody Allen. It was a short presentation devoid of dialogue or anything else noteworthy. For Sharon, though, it was monumental. She finally got her shot at the career she had always dreamed of having. Deadly Blessing, 1981, and Irreconcilable Differences, 1984, were among the parts she landed after continuing to seek employment for a while. Despite collaborating with more famous names, she received little notice from the entertainment industry. Sharon Stone's life was subsequently transformed in 1992 by Basic Instinct in ways she never imagined. Before that, she was never really a Hollywood star. She merely possessed acting chops. Everything shifted though, when she portrayed the enigmatic, beautiful, and brilliant Catherine Trumbull. After rising to relative obscurity as an actor, Sharon Stone became a global sex icon. The world went ballistic over the most contentious leg-crossing scene in cinematic history, not some shocking plot twist or line of incisive dialogue. As a squad of detectives searched for any evidence connecting Catherine Trumbull to the room, she remained motionless in a cramped interrogation room. Their interrogation turned into a nervous battle of intellects, as she skillfully sidestepped their questions with a mischievous grin and piercing gaze. In the script, Sharon Stone lifted her leg and crossed it over to the other side, but that part wasn't there. Within seconds of the shot, Hollywood was engulfed in flames. It quickly became one of the most paused scenes in film history due to the amount of times it was replayed. It was later voted the most seductive leg-crossing scene on television in a VH1 poll. Sharon Stone's meteoric rise to stardom had nothing to do with her musical abilities. The reason behind this was a picture she created without realizing it. The truth was laid bare. Whenever publicly verified these rumors, there was tension between them, and they eventually broke up and stopped respecting each other. Sharon Stone didn't attempt to conceal her distaste for the relationship when she reflected on it years later. She made the statement, "Dating Dwight was the biggest mistake of my life, twice." However, her most shocking statement was not even that. Kissing Dwight was like eating a dirt sandwich. This was her extremely cruel response to a different question regarding her relationship with Dwight. While speaking to the Orlando Sentinel in 1995, he took this seriously, not joking around. When pressed further, Sharon made no qualms about stating that Dwight's kiss resembled a dirty sandwich. Indeed, I did say it, she affirmed. Just by listening to her answer, you could tell how terrible she felt about the relationship. In contrast, Dwight Yoakam chose to remain silent. In response to a question regarding Sharon, he merely stated, I had just broken up with someone I had been seeing for 5 years, and was emotionally shaky. This entire interview was conducted for the Los Angeles Times. I was his flame, as if their friendship hadn't been memorable. That was a brief, emotionless response. Their reactions made it obvious that they both wanted to put the past behind them, even though they avoided discussing the actual reasons for the breakup. Sharon Stone continued living her life independently. She went so far as to use the Bumble dating app in her later years in search of love. Meanwhile, Dwight Yoakam discovered serenity. He tied the knot with photographer Emily Joyce in 2020 after they'd been together for a decade. Sharon Stone and Dwight Yoakam may have moved on since their breakup, but their behavior thereafter, particularly her hurtful comments, gives the impression that it wasn't your average split. That period of her life brought her shame. Additionally, Sharon Stone would go through numerous relationships that were more painful than enjoyable. Sharon Stone began dating film director William J. McDonald immediately after her breakup with Dwight Yoakam. This time, it appeared like they were prepared to tie the knot because they were engaged, not merely dating. In spite of appearances, this romance proved to be just as troublesome for Sharon as her previous ones. William and Sharon first crossed paths on the set of the 1993 film Sliver, which was co-directed by McDonald. Their relationship's growth was the problem, not its method, but its timing. Just 5 months had passed since William McDonald's marriage to Naomi Baca when he met Sharon. This immediately turned Sharon and William's relationship into a scandal, prompting the natural question, was this genuine love, or merely a staged affair? William wasted no time in leaving his wife for Sharon and going public with their relationship. The news of their marriage did not sit well with Naomi, who had been married to McDonald's before. McDonald remained silent. Sharon Stone was publicly referred to as a house wrecker instead. On the news program A Current Affair, Naomi made the derogatory comment about her, she's heartless and cruel. Sharon Stone shattered my dream. She abducted my spouse, she made some wild assertions, and the media couldn't stop talking about Sharon. The actor's spokesperson bolstered Sharon Stone's position by claiming that he had not been seeing McDonald prior to his divorce filing, which added fuel to the fire. Everything transpired so rapidly that the response was hard to believe. From the moment he filed for a divorce until he became engaged to Sharon, many cast doubt on McDonald. Maybe there were other people involved in this relationship besides Sharon who had ulterior motives. Director William McDonald was more than meets the eye. He understood the transformative power of stardom. His business might have benefited from his relationship with the most famous Hollywood star of the time, or at least he may have thought it would. Is he utilizing Sharon's fame to boost his own profile, or does he truly love her? In the absence of evidence, one cannot help but question the man's true motives when he abandons his wife after a brief marriage of 5 months in order to become engaged to a famous movie star. Their short-lived romance rendered the reason for their connection irrelevant. In 1994, after only a year of being engaged, Sharon and William ended their relationship. The initial method of getting together only served to deepen the wounds of their eventual breakup. Sharon Stone did more than just end the engagement. She also returned the ring via FedEx. It seemed like she wanted to forget this chapter of her life because of the cold final move she made. The media wasted no time capitalizing on the drama for financial gain. People felt that Sharon made a strong point by returning the ring in a way that demonstrated she didn't feel guilty about her actions. There was a lot of speculation in the Hollywood newspapers. Did Sharon decide to leave because she realized this wasn't the love she had hoped for, even though she may have known she was being used? William J. McDonald continued his film career after Sharon Stone was no longer associated with him. In contrast, Sharon found genuine love after ending another high-profile relationship. However, her romantic life was still fraught with difficulties. By the time Sharon Stone turned 40, she had achieved her goals.